All right, hello everyone. It is 1 o'clock, so I am going to start today's webinar. My name is Dr. Chelsea. I serve as the program manager for Region 10, Gateway to the Rockies Opioid Council, also referred to as GROC. We are a regional opioid council, also referred to as a ROAC. So I do have a couple of announcements. The recordings have moved to a YouTube channel. Just because we were using a Google Drive and these videos are really lengthy, and so that was taking up a lot of space. So they have migrated again to a YouTube channel. That is what is linked right here. So again, you can click on this link and it will take you to the YouTube channel landing page. The individual webinars will take you to the individual YouTube channels. You can turn on closed captioning to get some script if you need that. If that is not enough and you need additional accessibility needs, please reach out to me and I will find out how we can make this work for you. The second announcement that I have is that the office hours have moved to a meeting format. They were a webinar format that was causing a lot of issues with people being able to have free-flowing dialogue. So if you click on just the join, that will take you to the link. If you subscribe to the public GROC Google Calendar, then you'll have all of the office hours with the meeting link in your calendar. All the webinars still require a registration, so the link is in that for you to register for that individual webinar. And then once you register, you'll get a separate calendar invite to whatever email you register with that has the join link. So again, this is going to be honestly your best friend is just signing up and subscribing to the Google Calendar. So you should be able to click on this and it will take you to the calendar. If you need help figuring out how to subscribe to that, again, please reach out to me. I'm here to support you. Finally, before we jump into today's webinar on target populations and timelines, I do want to reiterate that at this time in this round of funding, the council is not looking for innovative, progressive, or novel projects. They are looking for safe, tested, empirical, and reliable projects and services. So just something to keep in mind if you are a recovery house and you are trying to expand into treatment, please consider if you've never done treatment, if that falls within that empirical, tested, reliable project, or if it would be more beneficial and in your best interest to submit a plan or a project specifically for recovery housing, build a relationship with the council, maybe get your treatment center off the ground and collect some preliminary data before applying for an award to expand your treatment center. Again, just something to think about. Please feel free to reach out if you want to have any brainstorming meetings about applications. Also, I do want to reiterate that there is a Q&A form right here. So if you click on this, it will take you to the form for you to submit a question, and then I will email you back with an answer in addition to placing the answer onto this public link. So if you click this link or you copy and paste this link into your browser, there is a running document of questions that have already been asked. Please make sure that you read this document before asking a question that has already been answered. I did add some headings just to make it a little bit more organized for people, but remember that this is available to you as well. So without further ado, I am going to jump right into the application. So I am going to be working, one last announcement. We have added the submit a renewal application link. This is only for those 4 grantees from 2024 who are seeking to renew their contract. There is a specific webinar for renewals on March 25th. If you are a current grantee and you want to renew your contract, but you're not sure if your scope of work is changing drastically enough that that would be a new application, please reach out to me. I'm here to advise you on that. So I'm just working out of the submit new application. And I'm going to work out of this. As always, I strongly suggest that you work out of a Google document, so that you can do word counts, that you can save and come back to it. This does not save. So if I were to shut my computer lid and come back, all of this would be gone. So only work in this when you are truly ready to submit. So target population. List or briefly describe the population your project will serve, including demographics and specific needs. GROC is committed to supporting projects that promote equity and target serving vulnerable populations. You may choose to include the following information in this section. It might be in your best interest to answer each one of these bullet points, again, in a separate document, and then stream your answers together for conciseness and coherence. So keeping in mind that we consider the following groups vulnerable. This is not an exhaustive list, and you should be able to justify why you're targeting that specific protected population or vulnerable group. So if you watched last week's videos when we were talking about project description, scope of work, and objectives, this background area, you should have already laid the ground with demographic information about your service area, some preliminary evidence that you have from your organization that supports your specific target service. So there is not a word count here, but I do want to show you what 500 words looks like. And I did use headings. Do not be afraid to use headings, to use things like an outline. This is not necessarily, it does not have to be in narrative format necessarily. It just needs to be easy to follow. Keeping in mind that most of the reviewers are not professional grant reviewers, and they are new to the field of substance use disorder, addiction, and recovery. So we want to be as clear and explicit as possible. So what I did is I just took these bullet points and I answered them in conciseness. So what is the target population? This project will serve the city of Example, and the catchment areas predominantly rural with limited access to healthcare and recovery services. So that's my introduction. The population of focus, the project will focus on the following vulnerable populations: rural communities with limited access to opioid treatment, low-income individuals and families, individuals experiencing homelessness, justice-involved individuals transitioning from incarceration, pregnant and parenting women. So because I identified each one of these populations of interest, I need to provide demographic information of how I'm targeting those demographics of interest. So if I were to say that I want to expand my recovery housing to specifically LGBTQIA plus individuals in Gilpin County, I need to provide demographic information that proves LGBTQIA plus individuals live in Gilpin County and are seeking my services proposed in my application. So again, you want that continuity and that consistency across your answers. So I did provide some statistics right here. All of this is completely made up, by the way, so please don't copy this into your application. Racial ethnic minority groups in Example City make up 25% Hispanic or Latinx, 5% Native American, 2% Black African American. Income, again, I'm looking for this low income individuals. Over 40% of residents in Example City live at or below 200% of the federal poverty line. I might include a citation of like where I got that information. Housing instability, approximately 15% of residents face housing insecurity, justice involved. So again, I put this in the exact same order as population of focus. So rural communities comes first. Then I do the low income individuals. Here's the income, housing instability, justice involved, pregnant parenting, pregnant parenting. I'm going to talk about the nature of the problem, again, specifically in my service area. Do not talk about nationally unless this information is not available for your specific area. So opioid misuse in the area is averaging 30%. Barriers include limited availability of medicated assisted treatment, long travel distances to the nearest recovery services with no public transportation, gaps in affordable housing, health disparities. Again, I'm providing preliminary data from my organization that proves that there's health disparities, racial, ethnic disparities in the area. Capacity needs and gap. Our organization has identified the need for increased staffing, infrastructure to deliver MAT, enhanced partnerships with housing programs, training programs to reduce stigma, and then I identify some available resources. And then because I identified available resources, partnerships with local recovery housing providers, you would also want to include letters of support from those organizations. And again, it's a letter of support, not acknowledgement, because they are agreeing to collaborate or partner with you as described in the application. So again, that's going to be 500 words roughly in the target population. Do not attempt to conflate your application, or inflate, I should say, your application to serve a vulnerable population listed here if that's not what you're doing. This is not an automatic for funding. It's based on how you can describe you meet that need. It's like a cherry on top of your ice cream. But if these people are not in your service area, then don't try to address them in your application because they're not in the service area. So that's an automatic objective that you're not going to reach. Be truthful and be realistic about who you're trying to serve, keeping in mind that your project might serve white middle-aged males in a rural community. People who live in rural communities are still part of vulnerable protected populations. So sometimes your service area alone might be enough. And if you can justify why white middle-aged males are in greater need than women, or how are you going to also serve women? Think of it as like a yes and when you're talking about your target population. Again, if demographic data or statistics are not available in your service area, then you're going to want to explain why. And you might also choose to address a more longitudinal plan of how you're going to create the infrastructure to collect that information. And then I'm going to take a break there and check the chat to see if there are any questions. And I'm not seeing any. Oh, here's someone. So Daniel asked, so basically the populations of focus need to match demographic characteristics. Yes. You should match, again, the service area that you are trying to target. So if you want to say that your target of focus is veterans, but you have no evidence that veterans are in the service area for your project, that is very questionable. How are you going to reach that objective or that milestone? Is there a follow-up? I wish we had the little iPhone bubbles when people are typing. So Daniel's follow-up is, if my population of focus is justice involved, co-occurring mental health disorders, and low income, that should be the characteristics, not necessarily racial and ethnic minority groups, vets, and unhoused populations. Correct. So again, you don't have to serve every single one of those vulnerable populations. You don't have to serve any of those vulnerable populations. Again, it could be white, middle-aged, middle-class males in Jefferson County. That's completely fine. It's not serve these people or your application gets dismissed. It's again serving specific groups who are more impacted by opioid use disorder, addiction, and less access to recovery services are like the cherry on top. You still get the ice cream, you still get the dessert, you still get the fun feelings of being with your family. You just don't have the extra cherry. So yeah, you would want to focus on justice involved, and then co-occurring mental health disorders and low income. Those would be your 3 target populations. And then you would want to provide some type of statistics or data of how you know that you're working with those people and they are seeking your specific services. I know in the case of Empower Recovery, justice involved individuals are primarily your population that you've been working with. And so that's something that you would say is that like you have a relationship with these local prisons, incarceration centers. You do regular monthly overview presentations so people can start thinking about your organization when they're ready to transition out. That would be enough to prove that your target population is in fact looking for you. So for example, then Daniel followed up with, for example, if we partner with detention centers, we know that we would be basically 90 to 100% of the population. Correct. And again, that data would come from, you already have the relationship with these detention centers for 3 years. You've served over 200 people from those partnerships in the last 3 years. Perfect. That's proof enough. And then I am going to go on to the next section. So there are a couple different ways. The next section that we're talking about today is going to be a timeline. There are a couple different ways that you can do this. Again, it might make sense to think about your budget first in year 1 and year 2, and then come up with some milestones based on that budget. Gantt charts are really great to give you a visual. Unfortunately, this does have to be a narrative format of some kind. And so I've chosen to use bullet points. Again, this is roughly 450 words. There's no word count in the timeline. I'm just showing you what 450 words looks like. Again, this being an exceptionally well written timeline. So I'm just going to give you a snapshot of the total budget requested for 2 years is 1.6 million. Then I'm going to call year 1 my planning, recruitment, and initial implementation. My key milestones I broke up into quarters because the GROC requires quarterly reports. And so I want to make my timeline match the format of the funding organization. I did a regular calendar, January to December. Keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to give us months. You can just say Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, because the anticipated award will not start until August. So your quarters might be a little bit off depending on how long individual contracting takes. So again, months are not required. You can just do it by quarters. You can give us months, knowing that that might need to get adjusted when we get to contracting. So I have put 3 goals in each quarter right here. And then I gave a snapshot of my year 1 budget expenditures. So this is just super brief bullet point numbers that the evaluation committee can say, okay, all of these things are going together. This makes logical sense. And then I went into year 2. I did the same thing, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I'm calling this program expansion, evaluation, and sustainability. And then I've identified key milestones. So I have 2 to 3 bullet points again, identifying very specific things I want to do in that quarter. And then I gave a snapshot of my year 2 budget, very high level. And so that the evaluation committee can say, okay, here's the timeline of goals, and then here's a snapshot of the budget. Knowing that you will expand on the budget in the budget upload right here. And we're going to talk about that at next week's webinar, but we are looking for consistency. So again, I would want to copy that number, put year 2 budget, that would be 85,000. This would be 800, and this would be I want to make sure all my numbers match right here. And I'll repeat that again when we get to the budget next year. In terms of a timeline, you can build out your timeline. Here's another example, January, February, March, and April, and then April through December. This type of a timeline is not good. You need to have more detail than this. You can choose to do like a month by month timeline. That would be fine. But this quarters definitely works a lot better for the council. That's just how they're used to thinking. That's how you're going to do quarterly reports. But again, there's no hard and fast rule. We don't have a template for this. You do have some agency and creativity of what works for you. If you do biannual, so 6 months at a time is a little bit big for the council. I would consider having at least 6 bullet points if you work biannually, and do 6 months at a time. So then you have like one goal per month. That's totally fine. But again, being as detailed as possible in what your multi-year, even if you're just doing 1 year, would look like. And I think I saw something in the chat. Daniel, yes, year 1 would be August of 25 to August of 26, tentatively. If you get caught up in contracting, it might be September to September. So if you kind of stick to that generic, like month 1, month 2, month 3, all the way to month 12, or like Q1, Q2, that would be a lot safer. Then you can plug in details when you get to contracting. Waiting to see if there are any other questions. I have to stop sharing so I can look at the chat. Daniel again asked, okay, would it be okay to start the funding in Q4, October to December, then Q3? So don't think of Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 based on the general calendar. Your Q1 for the project might be Q4 in a calendar year. It might also be your Q1 of the project might be half of Q3 and half of Q4 in the calendar year. So Q1 is based on the project start date, which again, we anticipate to be October 1st. So it'd be October, September, or it'd be August, September, October would be Q1 of the project. So the rest of Daniel's question. So Daniel's question again, would it be okay to start the funding in Q4, October to December, then Q3 is basically finalizing all other contracts outside of the GROC. So if you have partnerships and collaborations, that should be finalized in Q1 of the project, which again, might be August, September, October. It might be September, October, November. It might be October, November, December. It kind of just depends if you get caught up in contracting or not in post award. But you would want like partnership collaboration contracts to be finalized in Q1 of the project. So if you have any of those letters of support, collaborations, partnerships that you've identified, that would be a really good timeline bullet point to include in Q1. I love when you come to webinars, Daniel. You always ask great questions. Yes, thanks. I'm new to this and just trying to cover all the bases. Yes. I'm also new to this, and so is the GROC. So you asking questions helps us think about what we should include in future webinars. And I think that's all I have for today. Webinars are looking to be about 30 minutes of instruction time. Today we covered target population. The biggest takeaway again is focus on your service area. You don't have to address every single or any of the vulnerable populations. You really just want to focus on who is vulnerable in your service area. Whether they fit one of these categories or not, Clear Creek and Gilpin County are rural counties, so no matter what you choose, you're going to fit into that. And then in the timeline, thinking of closer to that 500 word mark minimum, thinking in quarters is probably going to be your best bet. You can also just do month 1, month 2, month 3, having at least one kind of smart-ish goal for or outcome for each month or each quarter. Giving us snapshots of your total budget so that the review committee can follow along before diving deeper into your total budget. Next week's webinar will go over the budget template and some steps that you could take to build that out. So I will go ahead and stay on for another minute to see if there's any other questions. Otherwise, this video should be posted to the YouTube channel in the next hour for people to watch as they need to. Thank you for coming, Daniel. Thank you, Linda.